And we're back for another HTML tutorial. This one should be fun. We get to finally incorporate images into our web pages. So to begin with, we do want to have our Web1 project folder open. And then we'll make a folder in there, and we will call this one Pictures Demo. And then in that Pictures Demo folder, we're going to make another folder. Because this is images, we want to have a folder that is called Images. This will be where we save our assets for this project. Now on these ones, if you're taking the class from me, I've given you a link for where you can find these JPEG and PNG files. Feel free to use those. Otherwise, you can use your own pictures as you wish, finding them from Unsplash, Pixabay, and those kind of things. In here, these are the pictures that I have. So there's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. These pictures I have optimized to be a good size for web. If you bring these in from Unsplash or Pixabay, you probably want to use some sort of online image converter or Adobe Photoshop. I used Photoshop. There's a bunch of them out there. Just a Google search away of how to optimize images to be smaller for web pages, because you don't want your web page taking forever to be loading. I also used Unsplash and Pixabay images because they're free to use. So anytime you're creating a web page that is for the world to see, don't post other people's work on there without their permission. Unsplash and Pixabay, you have the creative freedom to use those even for commercial purposes. Okay, so I'm going to copy these images into my images folder, so you can find images to put in yours, or you can copy these and put them into your folder, or you can kind of save them in the folder as we go along. Either way is fine. Once they're in that images folder, and when I save my images, I just go all lowercase, all one word, to make things a little easier for coding purposes. And then again, I have that in my images folder, and then my images folder is in my pictures demo folder. So that's a little different than how we've done this before. Alright, then I have my document here, and I want to save this right away, and I'll save this in that exact same folder where my other one was. So Web1 projects and pictures demo, and then putting a hypertext markup language file right here, and then we'll save it as index.html because it's only one page in here, and I want it to be right inside my demo folder, not inside the images folder for the index, just right in here. So I'll click save. If I did that properly, I should be able to see my pictures demo folder with just my images, where the images are in there, and then up at this level my index is in there also. Okay, those administrative tasks all done, so we're ready to start coding this now. So this same thing we've normally done in class all these other times, the doc type, the HTML tag, the head section, we have our Medicare set in there, we have a title. I'm going to call mine, this particular page, Outdoor Activities. And then meta name description for the content. I'm going to put in here a page of ideas for outdoor fun. Okay, now if I wanted to make this in regards to what we're learning, I would say something like this page is showing how to add images to my web page. Right, that concludes the head section. Then we're here for the body. And we're going to use some of those good old semantic things that we learned, some of those semantic elements a few lessons ago. So I guess we can start off with here. We have the body there. in the body we're going to have a header. That's good to know. And then underneath the header, we're going to use the semantic tag that we haven't used before. This one's called main. It's just another category. You can put anything in there that you want. What we're going to put in our main section is going to be a section, just for good purpose. And then I'll close the section here. And then I am going to also place in here an article. We'll add more to it later, but I think that'll work fine for right now to serve as a simple placeholder. Scrolling down a little bit, at the very bottom, we have our closing of the section. We have our closing of the main in there also. And then finally, at the very bottom, we can put in our footer. So this is the outline, or in other words, the skeleton of our page. And now we'll go through and we'll place in our text. So that way when we get to the images, everything will be a whole lot easier. So in the header section, we're going to put our heading. And as we've talked about before, the first heading is always going to be the H1. It's the largest one, the largest of the text in there. And I'll call this web page, I don't know, Alive Outside. Or maybe Alive Outdoors. Maybe then it kind of applies to our title up here a little bit. A little easier. That's all we really need for the header in there. Then if we go down to the main, just right underneath the opening tag in the main, I'm going to use my next heading, which is an H2, establishing that hierarchy. And in the H2, I want to type in here something like fun activities. So this page will give some examples of different activities that you could do outside. As fun as web design is, always good to spend some time outdoors and unplug a little bit. So good advice for that also. Okay, so that is there. Then we have our section on this. And the section is going to have these articles, so we don't really need anything else in there. But in the article itself, we can go in here, H3. And in here I'll type in activity example. This is a placeholder for right now. I also want to put in there a paragraph. And just some simple text. We'll go with the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And I will paste that in there a fair amount of times, just so I have text to work with and make my web page look a little bit like a web page. Alright, that'll work just fine. After that paragraph, we'll use our horizontal rule in here. And that is our section. And we'll have, let's think about this here, maybe 4 articles. We may need to add another one later, but I can just copy this article, paste, paste, paste. And now we have this impressive looking code, which is just really kind of repetitive in its nature through there, as all web pages are. Not boring, but like planned, repetitive, and consistency. I guess consistency is probably a better word to use. Down here in the footer, and you know, we probably actually don't need an HR after our last one up here, so I will remove that one. And if we add another article, we can always replace that. Then down here, as I was saying, for the footer, we will put in here like a paragraph, and in the paragraph we'll use our EM to make it italicized, and then in between the EMs we'll use our page created by your name, and then we'll use and copy semicolon for our entity code for the copyright sign, and just put in whatever the date was that this web page was created. Alright, that looks good. We'll open this up in our browser. And this is kind of the page that we've seen through all of our sections, but now we want to add some styles, and obviously we want to add our great images to it. Okay, so at the top, one thing that we can do is we can change kind of the information on these pages and everything, but I think probably the best way to start putting our images in this would be for the actual image tag itself first. There's kind of two ways to put images into a web page. One of them is just to place the image in. The other way is to place the image in as a background image. In the past, we've used background color. You can do that with images also. So you've been preparing for this moment your whole life without even realizing it. All right, and if we go down here to this first activity example, I can select that on there, and the first one that I want to use, let's say, is going to be hiking. All right, so this is going to be a paragraph all about hiking. Right underneath the H3 of hiking and before the paragraph tag, then I'm going to use my image tag. To do that, we use angle brackets, IMG, and a space, and then it follows by a SRC for source, and then we use equals, and then we use quotation marks, and this is going to be where the file is saved. All right, we saved ours in an images folder that is inside of this domain where this HTML is, so we don't have to put a bunch of other stuff. We just have to go images followed by a slash, and then I called this picture hiking, and it's a JPEG, so .jpg. And now you can see why I like to use all lowercase, all one word for the ease of coding purposes. All right, I'm going to save this, and then I'll go to my web page here, and here we have our first picture ever that we added to our web page. Pretty exciting. Scrolling down, we have our second activity that we're going to use, and instead of activity example, we will replace this one with fishing. Everyone loves fishing. press enter here, and just like above, starts off the same. img space src equals quotation marks images slash phishing.jpg, and I'll save that, and then I'm going to refresh my page here. Now if your image isn't showing up, then either A, you named it something else, or B, maybe it's a PNG file or a GIF file or a bitmap file, and you need to have the letters after the decimal matching. I knew that this was a JPEG because that's how I saved it, so I knew it was .jpg, so you may need to test that out. Or maybe you don't have your images folder inside the pictures demo folder, like I said to do, and then your image probably isn't showing up there either. So double check those things, double check your typos. It happens to me all the time. I'll like, why isn't this on here? Why isn't, oh, I forgot to put in my quotation marks, or I forgot a slash, and it's something silly like that. So just, it takes a little extra time to go through that, but make sure you go through all those little troubleshooting tips if your image is not showing up. The next one that we have on here, one of my personal favorites. How about golfing? So activity 3 is going to be golfing. And then underneath that, angle brackets, img space src equals quotation marks images slash golfing.jpg, and we'll close it up. Let's look in here, and the picture of the golfer is showing up. Very good. The last section that I have on here is going to be camping. We'll use camping for an example. Alright, and then down here we can go, now that I think you have the hang of this, we can just copy this one up here and we'll paste it, but then we'll switch golfing to camping. And there's our picture for that. Okay, now I am going to put an image down here in the footer also. So this one will go right underneath the footer. And this is just a little graphic that I found. It's called birds. I'm going to save it and refresh this, and oh no, it didn't show up. It's not showing up on here. Let me scroll down here and show you. We have this little broken link. No good. So I have this birds actually saved as a .png, just to show you how that works. So even though it's 3 little letters, makes a world of difference in there. So I'll refresh my page. Checking my images. Oh, it's called bird, not birds. Save. And here it shows that graphic down there as well. Those top images were all from Unsplash. This bottom one is from Pixabay. Okay, now with those all done, there is another part of code that goes with these images. All right, so like for example, when the picture of the bird wasn't showing down there, there was just a broken link. There is a way to put a little description in there in case the picture doesn't show up. So up here, I'll start up here with hiking, and in my image source I can go alt equals quotation marks, and I would put a description of the picture. So here I could type in person hike, or actually I think it was a group of people. Group of people hiking. Okay, and then I can copy this, and then I'll go down here to the fishing, And then in here I'll type in person fishing in a stream. And then down here, this is the golfing. Image of person hitting a golf ball. And in this one, tents set up by a campfire at night. And finally down here, this one I can put in like illustration of a bird. So a big part of the reason, like I said, if your images don't show up, then that's kind of a key thing with that. Take out my parenthesis here. There we go. Sorry. But the other reason why you want to have these in here is because not everybody who's navigating the web or on your web page can see. All right, there's people who are visually impaired or who are blind. They have a right to access the internet. And what do they use? They use screen readers, and it reads everything that's on your page. Well, if you have pictures on there, and a lot of pictures, yeah, they cannot see it, but as it's going through, it might say like camping, tents set up by a campfire at night. And then they'll know that there's an image of some tents there, and then you have some contents with it. So it makes your web page more accessible. You know, you want your page to kind of be accessed by as many people as possible and as easy as possible. So try to think of like what are some issues that some people might face, or some obstacles they have to overcome to see your web page, and how can you make it a little easier. So this alternate text is extremely important. All right, so let's go back here to our page. We'll make sure everything is showing up on there as intended, and it looks good. Okay, the next options we have are our background images. So those are the main images. An example of how to put in a background image, let's say up here in the header section, what if I don't want there just to be text there? What if I want there to be a picture in there? Well, up here in this header area, I can actually put in a style. So I'll go style equals quotation marks, and then I can go background hyphen image, and then I put in a colon, and then after that, this is a little different than how you normally put in a web page for just putting in the image. If it's a background image, we then go URL and then parentheses. And then in here we put in our single quotation marks, not the double quotation marks, but the single quotation marks. And I'll go images / landscape.jpg. And then after the parentheses, I'll put in my semicolon. Okay, so if I save that, and I click here, up here we have an image. It's not very big, but we can see there's a background image behind a live outdoors. Just like before when we did that with background colors, we're doing the same thing here, but with an image. It's kind of worthless to have the picture that is that small, right? So let's say we want to make this into a hero image. Well, there's a few things that we can do with that. And it's still up here in this style section. Something we could do is we could say we could add padding, for example. We talked about padding before. So we'll go padding, and then we'll put in a colon. And then let's see, if we go 150 px, and then a space, and then a 0, and then a semicolon, this means that there's going to be padding 150 pixels above the H1 and 150 pixels below the H1. And then there's going to be no padding to the left or right. All right, let's take a look and see how that changes things. Okay, that looks a little bit better on here, right? But if we look in here, what happens when the hero image becomes bigger than the actual image? By default, it does this in a repeating way. One way, like this is nice if it was a background for the whole entire page. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have an image that tiles all the way through there, you know. But in case you don't want that, one way that you could do that is you could use a style. You could say background hyphen repeat colon, and then for the attribute no hyphen repeat. That's one option that you could do, and then it would just show the picture. But then it would cut the picture off right here, and that's not going to look quite right. What if I want this to fill up the entire area? Well, to do that, we'll just go back up here into our styles again. And we can go background size. I'm going to press enter here, just so I have more room to work with, and that way you don't have to only see part of my screen. So I'll go background hyphen size, and I'm going to go cover. And then I'm going to go semicolon. All right. Okay, let's look back in here now. And if I refresh this, now the picture aligns up all the way. All right, there's other things we can do with this to even tighten it up a little more. Like there was some kind of cool scenery down towards the bottom, and I can see it when I shrink the page down. I can see it in there, but when it's big, I don't get to see as much. I just kind of get this area on the top, which it doesn't look horrible. But if you want to change any of those attributes, then you can do something like background hyphen position. And one of the options you can do is you can go with center. All right, so here it looks a little bit better. I can also go center, and then after that I could put in bottom. And so here it centers it this way, but then it aligns it at the bottom of the picture. So you can kind of see how that works. It's like, do I want this centered horizontally? And then do I want it centered center bottom? Do I want it center top? Do I want it center left? Or, you know, and you can combine all of those attributes in different ways. You can even use center. So like I said, depending on the picture that you're using, that may differ a little bit, but it makes that look a little bit nicer on there. We do have our text here, and it's in the middle, and that's not bad, but we could make that look a little bit better also. And the way we can do that is in our H1 section. Here we go. I'm going to put a style in here. So we'll go style equals quotation marks. And maybe one thing I want to do is make the text so it's actually visible, because the text is black and parts of the background are dark. So I could go color, and then I can go # FFF FFF semicolon. That makes that a little bit easier to see. After that, then I can also use something like display inline block, and we've kind of talked about different displays before. And up here in the header section, we can use our text -align and center, and then that is going to center the objects on our page, which in this case is our text. That looks a little bit better. If we wanted to even go a little further, down here in the H1 section in the styles, we could go with a border. So we'll go border colon, and how wide do I want the border to be? 2px solid. So it'll be 2 pixels wide, and it'll be solid, and it'll be the same color of white. That looks good. I'd like a little more room around the outside. So maybe up here in the styles, then I could add just a little bit of padding. So we could go like padding 5px. We'll take a look at how that looks. And that looks a little bit better. It's ideas for you to play with, right? The thing I like about it is no matter where the size is at centers, it doesn't look bad right here. It wouldn't look terrible on the left-hand side either. You know, you can kind of play around with that, with the padding and everything else, and make your hero banner look as engaging as you want. You know, sometimes they're pretty elaborate, sometimes they're minimal. This kind of depends the purpose of the page that you're creating that with. Okay, the next thing that we could do is actually on this page, we could try to center, not like center everything, but we can try to align things so that it's not so spread out on a page. It's a long way to like scan your eyes. So we can actually make this content be a little more condensed in the main section. And to do that, we'll go find our main area. Here it is. And with main, we can go style equals quotation marks. And we're going to go width of 70% semicolon, which means that no matter what the screen size is, this area is going to be 70% of the window. So it kind of makes it a little more scalable, I guess. And in order to make it be in the middle of the page and not just 70% on the left-hand side, we can go margin colon auto semicolon. And then that adjusts the margins on both sides, so it kind of forces it in the middle. Now when we refresh this, we can see how our page is kind of aligned in here like so. The footer looks a little goofy still. We'll fix that later. Don't worry about it right now. Another thing that we need to do is the background page is the same color as our main. So is there a way where we can separate these out so it doesn't, you know, so it looks like this is actually on a page a little bit more? And what we can do for that is by finding the body section, we can style the body. We've done this before with the background color before. But if we look at this here and we find, let's see. Yeah, I think this will work well. We can go style equals, and instead of using our our colors like we've done before, just to stick with the image of using images here, we can go background hyphen image and then URL with our parentheses and then our single quotation marks. And I have an image in there called, in my images folder, so images slash, and it's called trees.jpg. Again, you can use whatever picture you want to and save it however you want to. After that, I will use my background hyphen size of cover. And I'll save this. Now look at the page, and as you notice, it does not look real great right now. And also when I scroll, it moves with it. So let's say I actually want the background to be stationary. I can do that in here also. And you do that by going with background hyphen attachment colon fixed semicolon. Right, and then I'll save it. I'll look back on here again, and now when I scroll, you see the background image stays in place. It doesn't look so bad. I can't see my text or anything, but we'll fix that in a moment. So fixed is a good effect that you can use with your web pages from time to time. And then to make my information set out differently, I could do this in the main section, but what I think I'll do is actually just put this as the background color for my, you could go article, we'll go section. I'll go with my original idea. Alright, so here for the section, I can go style equals quotation marks, and then I will use background and then a colon, and this time I'm going to put in a color, but I'm going to do it differently than what we've done before. This one I'm going to use RGB. So if I go RGB and then follow it by a A, place parentheses in here, then I can select 255 for the R value. For the G color, I'm going to go 251. And for the B value, I'll go 255. And if we want to see how this looks, it puts the solid color in here. That doesn't look terrible. I do kind of like these trees. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but there are times where you kind of want to see information or see the picture show through a little bit. It's kind of a judgment call of yours, but in case you want to learn how to do that, and this works with any RGB color, you know, you just like we looked up hex value colors online earlier this term, you can do the same thing with RGB colors. But the fourth value, this A value, is like our opacity. And so if I go like 0.5, it's going to make this be 50% transparent. Now on there, that might be too much transparency. I can see the text, but not that great. So to fine tune that, let's try 0.8. And I'll go in here, and that looks a whole lot better. All right, next thing to fix, this little fun activities here. It's hard to read that. That's in my H2. We'll go style equals quotation marks, color, colon, pound sign, FFF, FFF, semicolon. Just a simple white on here. Or I could use, yeah, that looks pretty good. Shows up all right. Scrolling down a little bit, we'll notice in here, in this page box area that we've created, and again we'll worry about this down here a little later, these words come like right to the side, and the picture comes right to the side. Sometimes you want to have a little bit of breathing space there on the edges of it. And if we go back to our section here, after the colors, we can go padding 3px semicolon, and now we have just 3 pixels around the outside, giving us a little more room. That looks a little bit better in there. Okay, the page is really starting to come together. For the images, we have those in there, and if we look at this page one more time, see when I shrink this down, we start to run into some problems with our images. All right, and here everything's like sticking out from the side. Up here at the very top, this thing is 100% the width of the page, so we're never going to run into a problem with that. There's no problem with that whatsoever. All right, and even if you are kind of worried about that, you can always go up to your header section, and we could always say width is 100%, and it'll fit in that area. All right, but these other pictures, what are we going to do with these to keep those from squeezing all the way to the side? And it looks kind of boring if all the pictures are in the same area, and it also looks kind of bad if there are various sizes in there also. We can fix that a few different ways. Probably the easiest way is what I'm going to be showing you here. And if we find our first picture, which is our hiking image source on here, and you can put it at the beginning or the end, you can really do this anywhere, but what I will do is I will just enter this down to give myself some room, again, so you can see everything on the screen, or as much as you possibly can anyways. And we'll go style equals quotation marks, and this is still inside that image tag. All right, and we'll go width of 25%. Style equals width of 25%. Okay. I need to close this quotation mark here. There we go. All right. Punctuation problems. After we have the width of 25%, I can show you what that looks like on here. And when we refresh this, the picture's up here, and then the text automatically goes down to the next line. So if I want the text to like wrap around this picture so that it looks a little more natural in there, we can do that. And then just to show you, that's always going to be 25%. It does get too small, and in later lessons we'll learn how to fix that also, but we just won't do that today. But to wrap the text around that image, we can also use float colon left, and then because of that, we might run into some text coming right up next to our picture, and we can fix that also by just saying margin hyphen right 5px, and then I'm going to go margin hyphen bottom 5px. And we've talked about margin before in class, and so here you can kind of see another way that that is being used. So we'll refresh this on here, and we look at this, and our text then wraps around the picture on the left hand side, and it fits a little more naturally. Now if we look down here, because this is floating left, if the screen gets too big, then the rest of this stuff says, okay, well I want to fit up in this space too, don't leave me out. And what we can do is we can actually give this HR a rule so that it stops following the float designation. All right, so down here on this HR, I can go style equals quotation marks clear colon both semicolon. When I save that and refresh this, I back down, and if you don't have that area cleared around our picture, then this horizontal line would go right up there. But because we have that space provided, we still have that little bit of space of breathing room underneath there also, and then it kind of holds everything's place in that. All right, that's float left. We'll go in here to our fishing image, and I'll click here just right after the quotation marks, and I'll go style equals quotation marks, and for fishing we'll go width of 25%, just like we did before. We'll go float right this time, so that'll be a little bit different. And then we'll go margin hyphen left 5px and margin hyphen bottom 5px. And actually, yeah, we do want that margin left because this time the image or the text is going to be on the left hand side, so that's going to be a little bit different than the one before it up here where we used margin right. All right, saving that, and we'll refresh this. The image is right there. We have this problem again with the horizon line there, that horizontal rule. So I can just copy this style right here and go down to this HR, and we'll paste it in there, and then that's going to fix it up. Here we go. Okay, the last one that I want to show you as far as how to place these, there's a couple ways that this can be. So this will be in the golf section. There's no like float middle or no float center. Everybody asks me that all the time. No, there's no way to do that. There's a few ways where you can achieve this though, if you want the image to be centered. All right, down here in the golf section, one way that I can do this, and it's really easy, this is kind of my favorite way, and it's used a lot in visual storytelling pages. I can go style equals quotation marks, and I can use width colon 100% semicolon. And if we refresh that, nice. You know, it's a little grainy. I probably should have a better image quality for that if I'm going to do that on here. But when the page is this size, it doesn't look too bad. And that's one way you can center it in there. You can have your heading, a picture, and then text. That's pretty easy. You don't have to worry about the float, and you don't have to worry about that. So that does work. Another way is if you want it to be the same size as these other images, which in this case is like 25% is what we used. We can do that too, and it's not very difficult at all for that. It's also pretty easy. But here, this would be for the camping picture. And I'll go style equals quotation marks. And in here, we'll use width of 25%. Just to keep it consistent. We can then go height. We could go height auto, but more importantly, if we go display and then block, and then we go margin auto semicolon. Then our element is no longer going to be stretching across from one side to the other. It's just going to be as wide as it is, which is 25%, and then we'll adjust the margins automatically. If I refresh that on here, 25%, and then it's centered in there. So again, no float center, no float middle, unfortunately. These are two ways that you can center objects. Now again, there's another way to center them, and I'll show you that down here in the footer. And then we just about have this project wrapped up. I know this is kind of a longer one, so thanks for bearing with me on this. A lot of things to go through with images, and that is for sure. Okay, down here we can go something like style equals quotation marks for the footer, and we'll go background hyphen color colon, or background either, and then we'll put in our pound sign on here, and we can use the value of 6CA E75. Just to make sure I put that in there right. We have this green color, and that doesn't look too bad for the color. Kind of falls along with our outdoors theme with this. Then I'm also going to give this a little bit of some padding. So go padding 10px semicolon 0, or 10px space 0 semicolon. Alright, and that's going to work well. And then to make this look a little nicer, we can center everything in this footer. And so the reason why I wanted to put a picture down there too is to show you the third way you can center an image. And this is by styling the container that the image is in. So the image, this is the image, this is the container the image is in. I can use text hyphen align colon center. If I refresh this, the picture is centered and the text down here is centered. So everything in there is centered. So that is another way where you can center this image. That's way too big of a space down there, and we can fix that by just adding one last style, I think. Style equals quotation marks, and this is for the image of the bird, and we'll go width is 10%. And that looks much better. All right, and there we have it. We finally made it to the end of this. It's a little tedious, you know, there's a lot of details to pay attention to, but you know, we're starting to come together. There's a few things we need to fine-tune that we're still going to learn about, obviously, but we placed images in here in different ways: float left, float right, 100% width, by adjusting the margin to be auto. We did the text align the center in there. We used a background image. We fit it for the size to cover. We made this fixed back here so it doesn't move while we scroll. We have this color here that we can use a little bit of transparency with our colors when we use that RGBA value instead of the hex values. I still prefer hex values whenever possible, but that's a great way to use RGBA for an effective thing that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Everything's visible, looks pretty good, and we also made our first nice little hero section up here at the top. The picture down here at the bottom, I chose a PNG image because those will have transparent backgrounds. JPEGs and bitmaps and those kind of things don't have that. So sometimes you're looking for an image and when you see it in the picture preview, it might have checkered behind it. And usually what that means is if you download that image, it's going to be a PNG, and then the background is transparent. And PNGs are nice because otherwise we would have had like a white square or something around the outside of that bird, and it wouldn't look nice down there. But because it's a PNG, the transparencies, the values of them hold true, and that's another graphic you can use for that. And that's it. I appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions or if anything else needs further explained, and we'll get you on the next tutorial.